So I'm gonna tell you a little bit about sprigs and show you how to make them. What sprigs are they are decorative pieces that are made in a mold that you can then attach to a completed pot. You can use them with your coil pots, you can use them on anything you throw on the wheel. What it does is it just adds a little bit to the surface of the clay. You can also use sprigs to create feet for your pots. This will be especially helpful when you do your mold platters that you make off of a mold, so that you have a solid footing for that. So the way this works is we have all these plaster molds on the mold shelf, and they're different things. Some of them are 2-part molds, in which case for sprigs you really only use 1/2 of it. So this is a 2-part mold, and you can look at the two things. This side is the finished side of the mold, whereas this side is the unfinished side. So you've got this flat part and this hole in the middle. So we're not going to use this when we make sprigs, because what we'd want is really on this side for the most part. If you want something with the hole in the middle, you could press this side and then we could cut the hole out. But that would kind of be as a, situational type of thing. So we've got a bunch of different ones that you can do molds of. We have some basic cherry or light bulb type shapes. We have old button type shapes. There's these more geometric decorative type shapes, and then we have things that are a little bit more elaborate like this, that you can make a mold of and then pull out and attach to the side of a vessel or a pot. And then larger block sprigs such as these. So I'm going to just demonstrate these on the smaller ones. You're going to take some fresh clay, because it should be pretty soft, and you want to kind of make it into a small coil. The shallower the sprig, the less clay you're going to need. So for one of the sprigs on here, I'm just going to use this really small amount of clay. I want to make sure the end of it doesn't really have any gaps in it. I want to make it pretty solid, because if we have gaps in the end, then we end up with gaps in our sprig. So I'm just going to take it and I'm going to set it to a point, and then within this mold I'm going to press it in. I want to make sure it's pressed in all the way around so I get the clay into every different part of the mold. I'm going to go over the edge just a little bit too. The molds are made of plaster, so they are breakable and you can scratch them, so please be very careful with them. But once it's set in there, I'm going to let that sit for a minute because I want it to dry and take the shape a little bit. The plaster will help dry the sprig because plaster is going to absorb a lot of that moisture. If you are making the same sprig multiple times, once you make it about 3 or 4 times with pretty wet clay, it's going to be a little bit harder to take it out, and it's going to take longer because that part of the mold will have absorbed a lot of moisture from the sprig. So I'm going to do this one also. Again, I made it to a point. I'm going to press that in, and then I'm going to continue to press that clay in, and I really want to stretch it into all parts of this so that I don't really have any gaps on it when I pull it out of the mold. So I'm going to take the clay, I'm really just kind of mush it around the back. So it fills in all the gaps. You may have little air pockets that pop out while you're doing it, and that's okay. And that's going to be set in there. So when I go to take them out, with this one I kind of left a little bit of clay on the back side so I can just pull it out, and you can see the sprig that is left there. What I would then do is I'd let this dry a little bit, probably to leather hard, or just before leather hard, and then I'd cut this out, and I'd cut my back even, and then I'd score and slip this onto my piece. If you've put enough clay in there where you don't really have a hold to pull it out, take another piece of wet clay, just kind of form the end, and you're going to kind of twist it and smash it on, and that should pull the sprig out, which then again I'm going to wait for this to dry a little bit before I cut the edges and cut the back, and then I can score and slip that onto whatever piece I want it on. So that's how you make sprigs. They can add a lot to some of the pots that you make. It can be a really nice decorative piece. Depending on the sprigs, when you glaze, the glaze can catch in some of the high points and pool, or break on some of the high points and pool and some of the low points. So really adds another dimension of texture and look to the pot. So I encourage you to use these, especially in the finishing process, with the pots you throw on the wheel, your planters and your bowls, and your coil pots for hand building. So that's how you make a sprig.